Well, so yeah, just this week, a group of U.S. lawmakers traveled to Taiwan. This was, one of those things that wasn't really announced. Similar to something that happened back in June, I believe. And while the U.S. lawmakers are taking a tour of Taiwan, the kind of diplomatic engagement that China hates, they start holding, what did they call it?
Joint War Preparedness Patrol.
That's it. Joint War Preparedness Patrol. That would be a good tongue twister before you're about to, go on stage or
go into battle.
I don't think you need tongue twisters before.
I always
battle.
do voice warm-ups before I, get into a fight.
I guess that's what Xena did.
She's the warrior princess of my heart.
Oh, really? Okay. Explains
awesome show. Awesome show. And in real life, I think Kevin Sorbo, who played Hercules, and Lucy Lawless, who played Xena, actually do hate each other, perhaps.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's real. That show probably was, 25 years ago now? 20?
Probably more than that.
Mid-90s?
Yeah. Oh, man, that was great.
Okay, back on the rails.
Yeah, U.S. support for Taiwan. I was the training drills. Simultaneously, they're using U.S. mock-ups of U.S. aircraft carriers as target practice. It's really heating up in Taiwan.
I am really glad to see that U.S. lawmakers did make a trip to Taiwan, though.
Yeah.
And they visited, among other places, TSMC.
The semiconductor.
Yes, and they also visited the Taiwan's Ministry of Defense, which is apparently the first time that that's ever happened.
Which made this story about the venture capitalists seems even crazier to me. Like when you have U.S. lawmakers traveling to Taiwan to visit their semiconductor makers, just like how clueless are these venture capitalists?
Well, TSMC is also investing in the U.S. They're opening, I think, a plant in Arizona, I believe. So there is continued cooperation between Taiwan and the U.S. on the semiconductor issue.
Yeah. So definitely, while we kind of started this podcast on like everyone is stupid, we're going to destroy ourselves, there's actually a lot to be pretty positive about. The U.S. engagement with Taiwan is definitely ramping up. And part of that is like working with Taiwan to build semiconductors. So there is a positive current to a lot of this as well.
And working with Taiwan on defense, I think that's really important because the only way for there to not be a war over Taiwan or an invasion of Taiwan is for there to be sufficient deterrence.
Actually, one of the senators that went to Taiwan, John Cornyn, he is the co-sponsor of this new bill called the Taiwan Deterrence Act. That is basically, a lot of this is military funding stuff, but the idea is that the U.S. needs to help Taiwan with its defense more than it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, as this was happening, the Taiwanese Defense Ministry put out a report that said basically right now the PLA has the ability to blockade Taiwan. So they already have the ability to do this. It's not happening because of deterrence, basically. Because right now the Chinese Communist Party knows it can't handle dealing with the U.S., dealing with Japan, dealing with Australia and India.
And I think that's why what Blinken said this past week about the U.S. and allies being willing to take action is a good thing to say, even though it's not it's not exactly unambiguous as to what does action mean, right? But you would assume that it's more than just a stern warning.
Yeah, we do not appreciate China invading Taiwan.
Please don't. Yeah, no, we're taking stronger stands on that, and I think one thing that we could do is move, in some sort of seemingly unofficial capacity, start moving more U.S. troops to Taiwan to do things like training and set up equivalent of like military facilities. But obviously, with Taiwan, you call it something else, right? That's not as provocative as saying a military base in Taiwan. But like we got to have those things, and we got to have the, joint military drills with Taiwan that are as effective as the joint military drills that we have with the Quad and other countries. But we just call them something else.
The Boba Exchange.
What does Boba stand for?
Oh, that's a California thing for the bubbles and bubble tea.
Yeah, I know, but you'd have to come up with some weird acronym because it's the military, right? Like
Boba could be the acronym.
Yes, exactly. So there has to be an acronym.
On
okay, this
bombardment
is
already,
no, this is already bad.
No. Okay.
Bombs over Beijing action.
Ongoing buddy action.
There we go. That's not terrible. Shelley, good job.
It was going okay at first, and then I think I lost the
acronyms are hard.
Yeah.
But I believe that most of the U.S. government's bureaucracy is actually most of the time and money is spent on making acronyms.
You wouldn't necessarily be wrong about that.
Like, ask anyone who works in government. They're like, yeah, it's basically alphabet soup over here.
I like whenever, there's a new congressional act and they have to come up with some acronym for it, or a lot of the military drills have it's like the Eagle or something, and Eagle is something.
I like the way they used to name things was more after like people or names, right? Or like, I guess the example I'm thinking of is like the Miranda rights, which was named after a person, right? It's like, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say,
yeah, I don't.
That right, like that's not an acronym. That's from like the 60s, I think. But like, it was sort of the last 50 years or really 40 years that like everything has moved from names to acronyms.
Yeah, we could name something after what's his name? Dean Stockwell. I think he just recently passed on. The guy who played Al in Quantum Leap.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he recently died.
I've never seen Quantum
Leap. You've never seen Quantum Leap?
No. Wow, I did not expect such a strong reaction.
Oh my God.
He's just trying to get back home, Shelley.
No.
Or was he trying to put right what once went wrong?
Where was Quantum Leap? Was it like a network show?
I don't know.
Did I have to have cable to watch this?
I don't know. It's like an 80s show.
It was a good show, so probably you did have to have cable.
Yeah, fantastic. You'd probably really like it.
Yeah.
Should we start a channel where we watch Quantum Leap episodes?
That's probably
very
not
niche.
good.
It's a little obscure.
A little niche.
Yeah, great theme song.
Yeah.
Wait, will we get a copyright flag?
As long as you sing it really badly, I think we're fine.
Let's move it back to Taiwan, because that's where this whole thing is coming from, right? Like how do we use sufficient acronyms to work with Taiwan?
Sam leaps back in time into the body of Chiang Kai-shek and uses it to win the war against Mao.
I mean,
like before they even fled to Taiwan, you're talking about? Oh, okay.
To put right what once went wrong.
Well, I mean, you could also argue that he could go back and convince Chiang Kai-shek to establish separate diplomatic relations with the U.S. officially, so that as a condition of the U.S. recognizing the PRC diplomatically, which at the time seemed necessary to counter the Soviet Union, but the Communist Party would have to accept as a condition of that we would also recognize the Republic of China as its own independent country.
This sounds too complicated for TV.
Oh,
the
you're
most
right, for
boring episode of Quantum Leap ever.
It's all a bunch of
what if we
meetings.
establish different diplomatic relations versus
unless you got like Daniel Day-Lewis to play.
I'm just thinking Chiang Kai-shek.
Well, I was just thinking about Lincoln. I was thinking about Lincoln.
No. I know you were thinking about Lincoln, and he was great. But
if it's a modern day Quantum Leap starring Daniel Day-Lewis as the Sam character, because there were episodes like that where he did leap back into.
He looks in the mirror and it's Chiang Kai-shek, but for the rest of the episode, it's just Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. Because that happened in the show. He would leap in back as women, as different ethnicities. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and there's always the shot of him looking in the mirror.
Like,
right?
Whoa. One time he leapt into a paraplegic, I believe, like a guy who had no legs, but he still had legs, so he could stand up, and that freaked out other people. Yeah, there was an episode.
Really? I don't remember that one.
Yeah, because I think the solution to the problem for that episode involved him like standing up and punching a guy.
I mean, that really is the solution to all of our problems, as long as that guy is Mao.
That's right. Well, I mean, that's how all problems are solved on new Star Trek episodes. Burn new Star Trek.
I'm just lost.
That was a good show too.
New Star Trek?
Lost.
Oh.
Yeah.
I also never watched Lost.
You've never watched.
I also haven't ever watched
You've
Lost.
never watched Lost? I feel like I failed them.
I don't. Was this happening?
It was about a time traveling island. Come on.
I remember.
Crazy.
I remember Lost being really popular. I just hadn't watched it.
Yeah. At any rate, Taiwan.
You got to really commit to that, Matt.
I did have to commit.
Sam, I hope you leap back in time into Matt.
Wait, so what happens when he leaps back in time? Does it then change the time? Like, is this now a separate timeline?
It doesn't really go into that quite, but like basically he has to put right what once went wrong.
I think it just fixes it, Shelley. It just
It's
fixes
fixed.
history.
Yeah. There were some touching moments
Uh-huh.
in that show.
Okay, so it's not like that time travel show that NBC had a couple years ago where they kept branching off into different.
No, they don't go.
Mhm.
They keep it nice and simple.
Because they started messing with the timeline and then suddenly everything was different.
Well, as the show goes on, spoilers for Quantum Leap, everyone. As the show goes on, you get some sort of sense that perhaps there is some divine will behind everything the protagonist is doing. And then there's the implication that there might be some kind of demonic will behind a separate group of people leaping through time to put wrong what once went right.
Dun, dun, dun.
So it's like time traveling person of interest, but with God instead of AI.
There is an
Wow.
AI,
Okay.
Ziggy. After almost an hour of like very depressing talks about China, I like reminiscing about quantum leaps.